What is going on, everyone? Welcome to October. This is my absolute favorite month with fall in the air, and I'm only about 2 weeks away from my annual trip to Zion, and I'm really looking forward to that. Now, with that in mind, I've been thinking about the photos I shot on the trip last year, and I've been reflecting on the experience and perhaps learning a few things from that experience to take forward to the trip this year. And there were two photos in particular in that trip that I really like how they turned out. And I'm curious how you guys perceive these photos versus how I perceive them. And I know that some of you might look at them and say, you know, it's not your best work from Zion, but I have a particular attachment to these images. And I definitely hold them up fairly high with some of the photos I've taken in Zion in the past. And the first photo is taken in a kind of a backcountry part of the park where you have this beautiful pine tree set against these rolling hills of sandstone. And this was taken really early on in the trip. And it's a scene that I first found last year. It was towards the end of the trip last year. I found it, I was scouting around. And at that particular time, I was just worn out. There was no way I was going to haul the 8x10 back to that particular area because it's a bit of an endeavor to get back to that area. So on the trip in 2020, one of the first things I wanted to do was go back to that area, bring the 8x10 and set up the photo. And I gotta say, the night before making that hike, I was definitely rather apprehensive. I had a fair amount of anxiety because there are some rather sketchy sections of trail I have to navigate with an 8x10 on my back, some really steep drop-offs. You have to work your way down in some slot canyons and some scrambling and everything. And I worried that I might not be able to get there in time for the good light, and I really had a hard time sleeping the night before. So on the hike into there, I felt honestly a little bit distressed trying to get there in time to get that one photo. And I think a lot of that was also because of everything that happened earlier that year with the pandemic and everything else, and finally being able to go out to Zion. Yet at the same time, it wasn't the same sort of experience I was really hoping for because it was extremely crowded. There was evidence of vandalism and it was hard to park places. And I just didn't get that sense of calm that I really love about going to Zion. But at the same time, I found this beautiful subject. I managed to put myself in the right place at the right time and take this photo and sort of fought through all that stuff to get to that location, to get that image. And I really am happy with how that one turned out. The second photo is taken more toward the end of the trip. And this one is actually not too far away from where I had parked. It's in this beautiful slot canyon. I found this velvet ash tree, which is growing in this fracture in the wall of the canyon. And it's bathed in really warm light. By this point in the trip, I was physically worn out. And there was something that was really, there was something about that tree I really identified with because it was growing out of that fracture in the sandstone wall, and it was just barely hanging on there, which I think was very much an analogy for how many of us felt last year with the pandemic taking over and everything else. And I remember being underneath the dark cloth, staring at that image on the ground glass as I'm fine-tuning the composition and thinking to myself that I very much identify with this tree. And I think because I had that feeling in the back of my mind as I was wandering through the washes, I think that's one of the reasons why I noticed that tree to begin with. But then to have that realization as I'm actually looking at it, that, hey, you know, I feel like this tree right now, just barely hanging on, just at the mercy of the wind and everything else and all the elements in there. And so with that particular scene, it was one where I had to wait for the wind to settle down before I can do the exposure, since it was going to be a several second long exposure. And there was something very calming and very reassuring about that, to see a subject like that, to identify with it, but at the same time having nature say, hey, just relax, calm down, everything's gonna be just fine, and just wait for that wind to settle. And eventually I was able to get the photo that I was really hoping for. But both of these subjects are ones that I was drawn to, I think, because of the state of mind that I was in, because of everything going on in the pandemic. And so it's not just the here's a cool looking something on the ground that I oftentimes do when I'm out on these trips, where I just look for something that stands out to me for one reason or another. But these are ones that I think I was more emotionally invested in with these particular scenes. And I'd be curious to know if that comes through in the photos for a person viewing them, because I suspect it does a little bit. And it definitely, whatever state of mind we're in has an impact on the subjects we choose, how we frame those subjects, the sort of light that we're looking for, and everything else along those lines. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And looking back at some of the other photos I've taken through the years, I found that some of my favorite photos are ones that came at a time when I wasn't necessarily in as great of a place as I usually strive to be in. We're just out and feeling one with nature, but usually when there's something else going on, like the pandemic of last year, that helps me to produce work that I'm more satisfied with and has perhaps a deeper meaning. But man, I'm hoping the trip design this year will be those calm moments, relax, just enjoying the sights and the sounds, but we'll see how that goes. But I do want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you around next time.